right, so today we will be learning about how to solve multi-step equations. Our first step as we look at this example here is we have 2/3 x, that's one term, they are connected. We have another one, this positive 2 and this 12. To solve, we want to get rid of the term that's not attached to the x. The opposite of adding 2 is subtracting 2. We're going to do that to both sides. Once we do that, 2 minus 2 cancels, we get 0. We will be left with 2/3 x equals 10. The opposite, we have to get rid of this fraction. The opposite of dividing by 3, we can multiply by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. We'll be left with 2x equals 10 times 3, or 30. And then the opposite of multiplying 2 times x, the opposite of multiplying by 2 is dividing by 2. We will do that to both sides. That'll become 1. So 1x, or just x, is equal to 15. Our next example over here, again, we have this first term, 16 divided by x. This other term, 3. This other term, 5. We want to get x on one side. So x equals something. That's how we're solving it. I want to make sure x is equal to it. There we go. X equals. So we want to undo this minus 3. The opposite of subtracting 3 is adding 3 to both sides. That's going to become 0, cancel out. We will have 16 divided by x equals 8. And again, the opposite of dividing by x is multiplying by x to both sides. That's going to cancel. We will be left with 16 equals 8 times x. At this point, the opposite of multiplying is dividing each side by 8. And x will be equal to 2. Okay, moving on to our next slide. We will be using the distributive property for these problems here. We have to eliminate those parentheses. So the distributive property says that we will multiply the outside to everything to the inside. So we will have 7 times x, which is 7x. 7 times positive 2 is positive 14, equals 21. And at this point again, we have a term, another term, and a third term. We want to get x alone, x equals something. The opposite of adding is subtracting to both sides. We'll be left with 7x equals 7. Dividing the opposite of multiplying, so we'll divide on both sides, and x will be equal to 1. And then our final example, again using the distributive property, we need to eliminate these parentheses. We have negative 3 times positive 2x, which will be negative 6x. Negative 3 times a negative 1 is a positive 3, equals 15. Notice I didn't multiply the negative 3 times the 15 because it's not part of that parentheses. Again, we want to eliminate, we want to get x equals by moving everything else to the other side. The opposite of adding 3 is subtracting 3. That'll become 0. We'll get negative 6x equals 12. And again, the opposite of multiplying negative 6 times x is dividing by negative 6 to both sides. That will cancel. We'll be left with 1x, or x equals negative 2.